So, not too far from the Sea of Galilee, just up the hill from the town of Capernaum, is a place where Jesus is purported to have given his famous Sermon on the Mount. Like anything that's associated with Jesus in Israel, there's a church built on top of it, right? There's a picture of that church. Now, when you get to the next slide, yeah, that's the picture of the church. This is the church of the Beatitudes. It's a lovely, lovely church. And you can look down from that church, from that vista, to the Sea of Galilee. Here's a couple of pictures of that. So that's looking down onto the Sea of Galilee from the Mount of the Beatitudes. Next one. It's very nice up there. Imagine sitting up there listening to Jesus. If you walk inside this huge, beautiful church, you'll see under this golden dome 8 windows. Yep. And each of these windows is for one of the Beatitudes. Lovely. The Beatitudes are probably the most famous part of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, but they're just the beginning, right? It's just the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount. It actually goes on for 3 full chapters and contains some of the famous sayings of Jesus. This morning's text is among those well-known sayings. Jesus says, "You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. You're a city built on a hill that cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and then hides it under a bushel basket, but rather puts it on a lampstand so that it can give light to the entire house." And, says Jesus, in the same way then, let your light shine before others. Let your light shine before others so that people will see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. A city built on a hill cannot be hidden. Now, if you sit on the Mount of the Beatitudes, you can look around and see a number of places which Jesus might have been referring to when he spoke of this city built on a hill. This is the ruins of a city called Susita, and it's located across the Sea of Galilee from the Mount of Beatitudes. So if you look across, you could have seen that before it turned into just a bunch of ruins. But when Jesus was around, that city would have been built on that hill and visible. Or maybe Jesus was thinking of Tiberias. Next slide. So this is the modern-day city of Tiberias, seaside city. Again, this is just down the lake from the Sea of Galilee, and it would have been very, very visible from the Mount of the Beatitudes. And it's as you can see, it's a bustling, important city today in Israel, as it would have been back in the days of Jesus, because Tiberias was the home to the Roman garrison for that area. So maybe Jesus was looking at Tiberias and said, a city built on a hill cannot be hidden. You know, I think Galilee, the Sea of Galilee area, was probably my favorite part of Israel. Jerusalem is pretty amazing, and it's such an important city. But Jerusalem today is really difficult to try to get a sense of the ancient Jerusalem that Jesus would have been walking in, teaching in, and all the things that happened toward the end of his life that took place in Jerusalem. It's very, very different. But in the Galilee region, you can almost picture Jesus walking around the lake. There's not a whole lot that's built up there. You can almost picture Jesus walking around the lake, calling the disciples to leave their nets behind and come follow him to go fish for people. You can still visualize the movement of Jesus from Capernaum up the hill to the Mount of the Beatitudes. You can imagine the crowds around that hill listening to Jesus, and maybe Jesus looking out and seeing Tiberias or seeing Susita. You can imagine him speaking of a city on a hill which can't be hidden. And his point's pretty simple, right? Jesus says to those who would follow him, look, you're the salt of the earth. You're the salt of the earth. You need to keep being salty. You need to keep being that which seasons and preserves what God intends. You're to be the light of the world. You're like a city built on a hill that can't be hidden. Don't be a light that is put under a bushel. Don't hide that light. But be the kind of light that gives light, that gives illumination to the whole house. If you follow me, says Jesus, you are to be like salt. you are to be like light. You're to be like the city on a hill, able to be seen by everyone, bearing God's love, being the witness of God's love to all people, living lives of good works, letting your light shine before others so that people will give glory to God because of you. I think Jesus understood that the temptation for people is to blend in. Right? The temptation is to blend in, to maybe try to hide in plain sight. But for those who follow Jesus, the temptation was maybe to keep your faith more private. Don't cause a commotion. And in doing so, in trying to keep their faith private, trying to not be so public about things, there was a danger of losing what made them unique. There was a danger of losing their flavor, their capacity to impact the world for good. I think it's a temptation that's as real today for followers of Jesus as it was back then. I think some of us, lots of us, would probably like to compartmentalize our faith. We want to compartmentalize our faith. We'd like to have a private faith in Jesus. But in public, we don't really want to cause too much of a commotion. You know, it makes us uncomfortable to publicly declare our religious beliefs, our faith convictions. Isn't it enough that we know? Isn't it enough that we know that we are followers of Jesus? Why is it important that everyone else should know? Right? It's enough that I know that I believe in Jesus. Why do I have to tell everybody else about it? Isn't it enough that I believe in Jesus with my heart? That I support the ministry of the church? That I pray? That I read scripture and do my devotional time at home in the mornings or in the evenings? I mean, nobody likes a fundamentalist that goes around all religious-like, thumping the Bible and getting up on their soapbox and saying all sorts of stuff that makes us kind of uncomfortable. Every so often I meet someone that makes me a bit nervous. They'll stop me and they'll greet me and they'll find out. I mean, even when they find out I'm a minister, they'll say something like, "Hey brother, have you been saved?" And I'm not at all sure that even if I told them that, yes, I've been saved, that they'd actually believe me. Until at least I've been saved in the way they think I should be saved, right? We're Presbyterians. We're cerebral people, intellectual people. We're proper. We're reserved. We don't clock at church. We're reasonable, respectable. Our motto is everything decently and in good order. Right? Decently and in good order. Jesus says we are the light of the world. But sometimes I think we would like to think of ourselves as lights on a timer. Right? There are times we would like to shine, but there are times when we would like to turn it off and rather just kind of be more discreet about things. But Jesus says, "A city on a hill cannot be hidden." There is no hiding for those who are disciples of Jesus. So last week I spoke about Lady Gaga. I thought, when did I ever think I'd preach about Lady Gaga? Well, this week I'm preaching about a comic book, Black Panther. How many people have seen this? Younger demographic. This movie, Black Panther, has become one of the most popular movies of all time. It's actually nominated for Best Picture this year. It's almost a first in that it's a movie that people have actually seen. Right? It's a movie nominated for Best Picture that people have actually seen. And the premise for those of you that haven't seen it is this. There's a country in Africa called Wakanda. Right? So James and I will do Wakanda forever. It's a nation that's built on the remains of an asteroid that crashed that contained a metal called vibranium. There will be a test. Vibranium is this really wonder metal that does everything. It does anything. And the Wakandans use it to power their cities, their weapons, their flying machines. It also powers the Black Panther, who's the king of Wakanda, his suit. Okay? Over time, the Wakandans have become the most advanced nation on Earth, but in order to protect their treasure, the vibranium, they've chosen to keep to themselves. They built a force field that conceals their presence, their country, from the outside world. Their city has effectively been hidden, right? They've hidden the city. Now, the Wakandans send spies to live among the other nations of the world to kind of see what's going on. And the king of Wakanda sent his brother to live in, of all places, Oakland, California. The king's brother is suspected of helping a spy smuggle vibranium out of Wakanda. So the king goes and confronts his brother. The brother of the king says, look, I've lived here, and I've seen the struggles of my people. I've seen the struggles of people like me, people of African descent, who live in poverty, oppression, in places like Oakland. The king's brother sympathizes with the plight of the people, and he wants to use some of the power, some of the might of Wakanda and the vibranium to help these people overcome their oppressors and to find the dignity that he thinks that they deserve. He refuses to return with the king back to Wakanda to face justice. And in the struggle that ensues, the Black Panther, the king, kills his brother. The brother, though, has fathered a child with an American woman. And this young boy discovers his murdered father. And he grows up vowing vengeance upon those responsible. And he trains, the American government trains him to become this merciless killing machine. Eventually, I'm just going to cut all this short, he finds himself going to Wakanda to challenge the son of his uncle. So his uncle has died, and his son, his cousin now, is the new king, T'Challa. And he challenges him for the throne of Wakanda. Now T'Challa, the new king, the Black Panther, he wants to uphold the tradition of his country being hidden from the world, being isolated. But his cousin, this young man, his name is Killmonger, would rather see Wakanda use its power, the power of the vibranium, to foment revolution all over the world. He wants to empower and free the people of African descent. And this is the struggle that goes on. So here's a trailer from the movie Black Panther. Can you turn the lights off, boy? All of them.
I've seen gods fly. I've seen men build weapons that I couldn't even imagine. I've seen aliens drop from the sky. But I have never seen anything like this. I'm a tour guide.
Hold up.
We are home. My son, it is your time. You get to decide what kind of king you are going to be. Don't freeze.
I never freeze. Show me my respect. Get me out there. We over there. We don't get started here. Cause we over there. Cause we over there. Cause we over there. I waited my entire life for this. The world's gonna start over. I'm gonna burn it all. What happens now? Determines what happens to the rest of the world. You will not be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to turn on the power. The revolution will not be televised. This is fun. The revolution will be
That's right. Part of the movie takes place in Korea. I have to figure that out. One of the key themes of the movie, and there are many, many themes, themes actually in Black Panther, is that responsibility and identity. Responsibility and identity. What do those with power owe to those in need? What do those with power owe to those in need? What value is strength if you don't use it to help others? Wakanda pretends to be just another struggling African country, but in the meantime, it hides its true identity and ability. What is the obligation of nations like Wakanda to the poor and to the oppressed of the world? Can a city built on a hill be hidden? Killmonger asks the question that with everything that's wrong with the world, with his people suffering, and given the vast ability of Wakanda, why didn't they do anything to help? Why didn't they do anything to help? Shouldn't Wakanda be the city on the hill, letting its light shine for all to see, instead of keeping to themselves, hidden, concealed from the world for their own benefit? Now, T'Challa, the king, understands that the answer isn't as simple as Killmonger wants to make it out to be. Wakanda just can't suddenly reveal itself to the world, especially if in doing so it unleashes chaos or destruction or uncontrollable violence. And it can't just merely impose its superior technology and its will on the less advanced nations of the world. There are competing narratives at work here. One is that Wakanda, or any powerful nation, should use their superior technology, their superior means, resources, to bend the rest of the world to its will. The other being that Wakanda, offering its knowledge and ability, invites people to choose whether they want what's being offered, not being forced to take it. And the movie, in presenting these two options about power, helps us maybe to understand something about the way God works, the way God is. Jesus says that his disciples are to be like a city built on a hill which cannot be hidden. He says that we are to be the light of the world, salt of the earth. We are to let our light shine before others, to allow our good works to be seen, so that people will give glory to our Father in heaven. But the question could be asked of God: why do you call your people to be so open about faith, when it seems that you, God, have been maybe less than forthright about your power and your identity in the world? If you're God, given all the suffering, given the evil in the world, if you have all power, and if you are all love, why haven't you done something about this evil, about this suffering in the world? Why do you call us to be the light of the world when you're a light that's supposed to shine in the darkness and the darkness cannot overcome? Why is it then, when you're supposed to be the light, there's still so much darkness in the world? Of course, the answer is that God has done something about the evil and the suffering in the world, but just not in the way that we expected, right? Just not in the way that we expected or wanted. We want the symptoms to be dealt with. We want the symptoms to be dealt with. We want the pain and the suffering to be addressed. But God chose to deal with the root of the problem. God chose to attack it at its core. The death and resurrection of Jesus Christ is how God did something about it. Right? The death and resurrection of Jesus Christ is how God did something about it. With that one act, the root of the problem, sin, our brokenness, was dealt with. Now you're saying, well, if the root of the problem was dealt with, why aren't things any better? Right? If God has dealt with the root of the issue, why aren't things any better? It's a good question, but just as the Wakandans didn't think that the right thing to do was to force their help upon the rest of the world, God isn't about to do that either. Right? God isn't about to do that either. There's a solution for the world. There's a solution for what ails the world, for the sin of the world. It's salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ. That's the solution. But it's a solution that people have to choose and accept for themselves. It's not a solution that God will impose on people against their will. So the interesting thing is there is a solution, but people would rather debate whether or not it's the right solution. or one that might work for them. And in the meantime, the symptoms of the problem rage on and on and on. When we're called as followers of Jesus Christ to shine as the light of the world, when Jesus calls us to be like a city built on a hill that cannot be hid, what we're doing isn't to conform the world to our wishes, to our beliefs. What we're doing, what Jesus invites us to do, is to model the same gracious, invitational, generous love, his love, to the world, as he did to us. To let our light shine isn't about demanding conformity to our beliefs or our ways. It's not about condemning those who don't believe as we do, as being evil or corrupt. To let our light shine is to continue offering everyone the way of love, the way of grace, the way of hope, and the way of mercy. It's to let our light shine before others so that they will see God in all that we do and give thanks to God for it. We cannot force people to believe, but we have to offer people every reason for them to choose to believe. And we have to offer it with sincerity and integrity, authenticity, compassion, and with love. I get that it's hard to be a public Christian these days. It's hard, I think, because Christians have taken some pretty hard knocks in public these days. You may have read just yesterday that the Pope defrocked an American cardinal accused of sexual abuse. And he's just the tip of the iceberg, right? There are far too many religious figures whose hypocrisy and failures have reflected so poorly on the whole of our religious faith. There's a Chicago area megachurch pastor who was fired. He's the founding pastor who was fired by his church because he was recorded saying some really, really inappropriate comments, including wanting to frame his enemies as his opponents by planting child pornography on their computers. This is the minister of the church. The disillusionment, betrayal, and loss has been devastating to those who place their trust in such leaders. It's hard to be a public Christian, but it seems that so many followers of Jesus are willing to suspend their ethical and moral convictions to elect someone who thoroughly represents everything that is the opposite of what Jesus stands for, but who will enact their political agenda. It's hard to be a Christian in this sort of society. But my sisters and brothers, we cannot hide our light under a bushel. We can't hide our light under a bushel. We can't conceal the city built on a hill. We have to let our light shine before others. We can't be selectively Christian. Jesus didn't say, I want you 25% of the time, 50% of the time. Jesus says, I want you all the time. I want all of you, 100% of you. He's very clear about what discipleship means. He says that unless our righteousness exceeds that of the scribes or the Pharisees, that we won't get into heaven. That's not a statement meant to terrify us. I mean, which one of us has that sort of righteousness? Not me. Right? It's not a statement meant to terrify us, but rather make us understand that if we will trust Him, if we will trust Him, if we will obey Him, follow Him, despite our weakness, despite our failings, despite our imperfections, He will, as the one who lives in us, make our righteousness beyond anything that we can imagine. Because His righteousness will live in us. That's how serious He is about our discipleship. At the end of the movie, King T'Challa, he's vanquished his cousin. He speaks at the United Nations, and he says to the gathered delegates, for the first time in our history, we in Wakanda will be sharing our knowledge and resources with the outside world. Wakanda will no longer watch from the shadows. We cannot, we must not. We will work to be examples of how we as brothers and sisters on this earth should treat one another. Now, more than ever, the illusions of division threaten our very existence. We all know the truth, that more connects us than separates us. But in times of crisis, the wise build bridges, while the foolish build barriers. We must find a way to look after one another as if we were a single tribe. That's from a movie. That could be preached at any pulpit that I know of. The world needs more disciples who will let our light shine. Right? To be like the city built on a hill, who will not hide our faith, our convictions, our passion for God and for the people of God. Don't get me wrong. We don't have to change the world. You and I don't have to change the world. That's what God does. But Jesus does command us that we let our light shine. Let our light shine. To be like salt which remains salty, useful, true to the purpose that God has for us. My friends, we are the body of Christ. We are the body of Christ. We are the people of God. We are a city built on a hill. And we cannot be hidden. Cannot be hidden. So let your light shine. Thanks be to God. Amen.